Hello and welcome. This is Lita Downs from the Center for Faculty Excellence, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Stress Reduction for Faculty, Tips on Coping from a Driven Type A Personality. Dr. Steve Knipe, Professor Emeritus in the School of Higher Education, Leadership and Policy in the Richard W. Riley College of Education and Leadership, will be presenting this session. He originally presented this offering at the Winter 2019 National Faculty Meeting in Tampa, Florida. Welcome, Dr. Knipe. It's so great to see you again.
Hi, Lita, and hello, everyone. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be talking with you today, and we will be going through that session that I did in Tampa, as Lita mentioned. I should preface this by saying that if you looked at the title, it talks about I am a driven type A personality. And I've got to tell you, I admit to that. Because of that sort of bad thing that I have, I know what some of you go through. It's very hard for faculty, particularly in an online institution, but as well as brick and mortar. And I know some of you are probably in both situations, both teaching online for us at Walden, but also teaching at a brick and mortar school. So what we're going to talk about today are the things that you see on your screen right now. We're going to talk about personality types, my type A, for example. We're going to talk about what causes the real issue, and that's stress, because stress affects some of those personality types more than others. We're going to identify what some of the stressors are, and they may be different for different people, but we'll look at some of them. We'll talk about how stress functions in our bodies, how it causes us some issues, from health issues to just general malaise. And then we'll have you, if you want, and I hope you will, take a stress test. There's a number of them out there, and the one I'm going to be sharing with you today is sort of a short one. It's only 10 questions, and you'll be able to do it in just a few minutes. Then after we've done that, I'm going to share with you some of the ways that I have learned to limit my stress, and hopefully that will be useful for you as well in limiting your stress. One of the things that I do and sort of keep in my mind is this phrase from the Serenity Prayer. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. I think that's real important. It's sort of getting in touch with our inner selves and recognizing that we cannot be all things to all people. There are some things we cannot change, and we just have to accept them. And that particular stanza from Niebuhr's prayer, I think, is pretty important to remember. I sort of got online and said, okay, what is stress? And when I looked up stress, and I made a little word web out of it, these are the ideas that kept popping up in the articles that I was looking at as I prepared for this presentation. You can see obviously the big word stress, but the other big word that's there is management. And that's sort of what we're going to be talking about throughout this presentation. Stress itself, but then how do you manage it? Now, what would you say if I suggested that humans are not the only animals that get stressed? Well, you might say, of course, primates get stressed. Maybe our dogs get stressed because they're living closely with us, or cats. In December of last year, right before I did this presentation in Tampa, our local newspaper had an interesting article. Cows also get stressed. Now, you may not think cows are real bright. That depends on what you think about cows. But this study from the University of British Columbia talked about how they identified cows as being fearful, pessimistic, optimistic, sociable. It sounds like humans, doesn't it? So we are not the only creatures that do stress. And I don't know whether that makes you feel better or makes you feel worse to know that you're in the same situation as a cow, but nonetheless, that is the truth. So I had mentioned we're going to be talking about personality types, and there's all sorts of ways for judging or rating or listing personality types. One of the ones that is really common and that most of you have probably done at one time or another is the old traditional Myers-Briggs. And Myers-Briggs sort of divides everybody up into where they fit on a grid, basically around 4 different variables: how they see the world, how they process information, how they make decisions, and how they like to structure how they interact with things. So extroversion, introversion, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. And I will tell you that not everybody always stays the same. I, for example, depending on whether I am really relaxed or I am a little more stressed, if I'm really relaxed, I am going to be an INTJ. In other words, I'm dealing with introversion. I'm sort of introverted. The N is intuition, so I deal a lot with intuition. The T is thinking, and the J is judging. Now, you can have these in various levels, as I'm sure you remember from when you took that test. And you can see on the screen there is a link that will take you to the MyersBriggs.org homepage, so you can actually get a little more information. And I believe that they have a sort of a shortened version of the longer Myers-Briggs. So, when I'm actually working around people, I tend to be an ENTJ. I am not normally an extroverted person. I am really more introverted. But when I am with people, I have learned how to put on that hat where I am comfortable being around people. And you may do the same thing. Many people don't like, but they actually switch between the I and the E depending on the situation in which they happen to find themselves. So anyway, Myers-Briggs is one way. A more recent personality type has been called the Big Five. Now, remember, Myers-Briggs was using 4. The Big Five is using a little different kinds of thing. Again, you can see here on the screen, it is from an organization called 123test.com. But if you look at that image over on the right hand of the slide, you will see that there are the 5 different types. So some of those words may sound a little bit pejorative, and they're not really meant to be. It's simply an observational kind of thing. So that openness, for example, if you are in the open category, what you would be most likely to have would be excellent ideas. You are quick to understand things. You like to play with difficult words. You're full of ideas and that sort of thing. If you are in the conscientiousness area, you find yourself always prepared, paying attention to details, getting chores done right away, liking order, following a schedule. You are probably not a procrastinator, for example. The next one down, extroversion. If you are a highly extroverted person, you are the life of the party. You don't mind being the center of attention. You like things to revolve around you. You will start conversations, not just participate participate in them. You'll talk a lot in a group setting. Agreeableness, you're interested in people. You sympathize. You have empathy. You have a soft heart. You care whether bad things happen to people. The last one, it's, if you're neurotic, that has sort of a negative vibe to it, but it's not really meant to be negative. It's simply meant to look at how you interact with people and things. You tend to get irritated easily about things. You get overly stressed pretty easily. You get upset easily. Sometimes you'll have mood swings. You'll be really, really happy, and then you will be really sad or really upset. You'll worry a lot. So those are the kinds of things in this 5 personality types that you might find yourself, and these are available for you if you wonder, am I neurotic? Am I conscientious? Well, we're not going to do it in this talk, but there is a free Big 5 online test. And I just took a screenshot of that first page of it. It is a timed test, so you don't get to think forever and ever on these things, but there are 73 questions, and you have 20 minutes to do them. So you can see the scale that's there from strongly disagree to strongly agree and everything in between. So basically, if you get online at that website that's showing there and go to this website, you can determine where you are on this Big 5 category of personality. Now, you notice that in the title, I talked about being a type A personality, and I haven't mentioned those types yet. Well, it's coming next. Personality types, type A, B, C, and D. Now, what does that mean? Well, most people understand a type A. They know that a type A personality is focusing, they're competitive, they love to achieve greatness, they don't like it when it takes a lot of time for them to be successful. Fewer people know about B, but you sort of say, well, B is a little less than A, just like in grades, and that's sort of right, but not exactly. So people who have type B tend to be more relaxed. They don't fall into stressful situations taking it personally. They can still be highly competitive, but they seem to have less urgency about getting things done. Driven. It's like, oh, well, it'll come. Okay, so A's and B's are the more common personality types that folks talk about, but there are C's and D's. Now, a type C personality is going to be a person who focuses on fine details of any given situation. They like to get lost in whatever information is available to them, to glean new opinions from the data. Sounds like a researcher, doesn't it? And yeah, you probably would find a number of researchers. If they are pure researchers and not faculty teaching, then you might find them as more likely to be type C. Type D, which is the last type, and of course in grades, D is a bad one, but people who have type D actually see the world differently than the A, B's, and C's. Type D personality tends to be the pessimist. They see the world in a very negative way. Now, there might be situations, they might find situations that most people would find to be optimistic, but they will be pessimistic. It is sort of like, oh, woe is me, the sky is falling. Okay. Now, you can see a highlighted web link there to YouTube, and it's a really cute visual way of sort of looking at how type A, B, C's, and D's might interact. And of course, you see the link where that test is found. And remember, it is timed. It is 73 questions, and you can do it. Just have 20 minutes available before you get online to do it, because as I mentioned, it is timed. It is timed. So those are some of the personality type labels that we use, from Myers-Briggs to the Big Five to the ABCs, and there are many others. Okay, many others. These are the ones that tend to be the most common and the ones that you hear about most often. Any of those personality types can have some degree of stress. So what is causing, or what is stress? Well, there are many, many definitions of stress, okay? And here are sort of 6 that were taken from a website called GoStress.com, and I just wanted sort of a broad variety of what is stress. And so stress is worry or anxiety. It's tension, bodily or mental. It can be caused by strain and overwork, mentally or emotionally. You can read that yourself. I don't need to read it to you. But the idea from this is that there are many different definitions of stress, perhaps as many definitions or more than you find different labelings of personality types. Okay, so it is certainly possible to have those. So, which stress do you have most? If you are worried about your job, if you're worried about getting a promotion, you may be the first definition. You may have worry and anxiety. If you have been working very, very hard so that you are having an issue with going through activities from the outside, then perhaps you are mentally or emotionally having disruptions. So, it's going to be pretty broad. It's going to be across a broad number of areas. Just realize that stress can hit in many different ways. And that's the purpose of this definition. So there's not one definition for all of stress. Now, here is a picture, obviously, since you're looking at it. Do you see anything in this picture that would cause you stress? And this is going to vary by individuals. Let me tell you where this picture was taken. It was taken in an elevator entrance on a cruise ship as the passengers were getting ready to deboard, to go onshore rather, to a particular program. The biggest group had already gone down. This group was late. So would this stress you? Well, I can tell you, some of the people in this photograph were very stressed. Stressed from the standpoint that they knew if they were going to get off and catch the bus to the particular site they wanted to go to, they were going to have to move. And the elevator was going very, very slowly. And that's not unusual for elevators to go slowly. Elevators go at their own rate, and they seem to stop, particularly if I'm in a hurry, they stop on every floor. So next time you're getting on an elevator or waiting for an elevator and someone else is there, watch to see if they are just sort of, well, yeah, it'll come when it comes, or if they're the kind of person that would be tapping their foot, sort of hitting their hand, sort of bouncing up and down as they know they're late. And it happens. I mean, if you watch people, you will find that happening all the time. So what you need to do, if I could give you some advice, what you need to do individually is to identify those things that cause you stress. Not all of us are stressed by the same thing. Some of us are pretty stress-free about work, but family can really create a problem. Our husband or wife or son or daughter, mother or father, family stressors can be really strong. Work, for those people who have work stress, can be things like email and phone. And you've probably heard your colleagues, I know I have, and I've probably said it. My inbox has 200 emails in it, and I've only been gone from the office a day. Or everybody has turned in their paper, and I've got to get it back to them by X. So grading. One of the interesting and great things, I think, about working at Walden is that we can work really anytime we want to, because we are not doing synchronous connections. We're online, but that's also one of the bad things, because while we can work anytime and from anywhere, we have a tendency, many of us, to work all the time and all the places we happen to be. You know, I've got to admit, very bad, and I shouldn't, but I have been at church before. Phone is not ringing. Okay, so I do turn off the phone, but I can feel it vibrate in my pocket. I have a tendency, an urge, to see who is sending me messages. And when I was teaching full-time and working as a full-time program director, I knew it was somebody who needed something. And I didn't want to let them down. And, you know, that's me. Okay. So work was a bigger stressor for me than these other things here. So anytime, all the time. I mean, those are your two dichotomous changes or options there. Some people are affected by world events. With the current political climate, both in the United States and in the world, with dictators taking over in places in the Middle East, places in Asia, you know, I grew up during the period of the missile crisis. And the missile crisis was a time that in my case, the Soviet Union was going to bomb us out of existence with a nuclear weapon. That was scary. The world is scary again, with individuals who seem not to have the best interest of humanity, but it doesn't have to be something that severe. You know, it can be other things as well. It could be trade. It could be what's happening to my 401k. It could be something else. Okay. Fear of various things. You know, I'm afraid of getting sick. I'm afraid of having a wreck in my car. I'm afraid of breaking a leg. I'm afraid of XYZ. Or guilt. Guilt. What is guilt? Well, all of us have some guilt. All of us. You know, am I responsible for that person falling off their bicycle? Did I cut too close to them as I was driving down and the bike path was beside me? You know, so guilt is a big motivator for people, and certainly a big stressor for some. Sort of hooked in with guilt is anxiety. I have just a general malaise. I'm worried about everything, you know, you can think of, you know, too much drinking, too much smoking, too much this, too little that. Anyway, but you get the idea that stressors are going to be different for different people. Okay? And you, each of us, needs to identify what our particular stressors are. Once we've identified our primary, secondary, tertiary stressors, then we have a better chance of handling what that stress manifests itself in as we live our lives. For example, depending on the person, Okay? Not every person is going to have all of these stress manifestations. They may have others than what you see here. AFib, of course, is atrial fibrillation, and it is a malbeating heart, if you will. But atrial fibrillation is very, very common today in those of us who are 50 years of age and older. And the older you get, the more likely it is you're going to get AFib or atrial fibrillation. And you've seen ads on TV, this helps you do X, Y, and Z. Some people who are stressing will turn to either gluttony or bulimia, comfort eating, if you will. And some people will feel stressed because they will feel guilt. I am eating so much and I know I shouldn't be doing it, so now I've got to purge. Bulimia. So those things help. Manic behaviors, and they can be simple, like I can't sit still, I've got to keep tapping, I've got to keep moving, etc., etc. And then there are many other health situations like ulcers, which is a common one. Many people who have high stress turn to drinking alcohol. Some will have heartburn. Some will go into gambling, and not necessarily going to Vegas or one of the gambling parlors, but they will bet on anything, everything. And if you listen, you can hear some people who have that. Some people even turn to self-harm, and the ultimate self-harm, of course, is suicide. Others will use sex as a manifestation. It feels good, therefore I can forget for a little while XYZ that's causing me to have stress. So these and many others can happen to individuals that are highly stressed. One of the things that I unfortunately have a tendency to do is to get too much caffeine. And it can stress your heart. It can lead to that atrial fibrillation. It can lead to that general malaise that you might have. And so while it might make you feel good in the short run, giving you a little boost, it can hurt you in the long run. This particular article was in the New York Times in November of 2018, and you can look that article up. You see the link there as well. So we've talked about some of those things, and there are stress tests. Now, a couple of them I mentioned earlier were not stress tests, but personality tests. Okay, so there's a difference. So personality tests like Myers-Briggs, like the Big Five, like the ABCD, but there are stress tests as well that will help individuals figure out what you are stressed about. You can see here on the screen, do you get headaches? Are your muscles tense? Are you tired? Do you have anxiety or worry, phobias, etc., etc.? And then how often? So you can see the link there at the bottom. And what that does is to help you figure out what your stressors and your stress manifestations might be. Okay, it's a good thing to do if you have a few minutes. This is not a timed test, but it is a good way for you to check. Now, we don't have time to do the really long test here, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to participate in a quick and dirty stress test. And the quick and dirty it's only 10 questions. And if you want to participate at any point, you can put this video on pause and take more time to think about it. Or if you can do it as we're going, then we'll go through it together. But remember, you can always pause this video so that you have the opportunity to spend as much time as you want thinking about the questions. So I have two screens worth of questions, 1 through 5 and 6 through 10. And if you want to participate, I would suggest you grab a sheet of paper and number it from 1 through 10. And what you're going to be putting beside that number, 1 through 10, is either the number 0 for it never happens with you, 1 almost never, 2 sometimes, 3 fairly often, and 4 very often. So we're going to use that Likert scale from 0 to 4, 0 being never, 4 being very often. So if you've had the opportunity to grab that little scrap of paper, let's look at those questions and give you the opportunity to put down the number. In the last month, how often have you been upset because of something that happened unexpectedly? Remember, 0 for never, 4 for very often, and the other numbers in between. 2, in the last month, how often have you felt that you were unable to control the important things in your life? Again, 0 to 4. Number 3, in the last month, how often have you felt nervous and stressed? Number 4, in the last month, how often have you felt confident about your ability to handle your personal problems? And the last question on this slide, in the last month, how often have you felt that things were going your way? Okay, moving to the second set of questions. Same scale, 0 for never, 4 for very often. Remember, you can pause the video whenever you need to. 6, in the last month, how often have you found that you could not cope with all the things that you had to do? 7, in the last month, how often have you been able to control irritations in your life? Number 8, in the last month, how often have you felt that you were on top of things? Number 9, in the last month, how often have you been angered because of things that happened that were outside of your control? And finally, number 10, in the last month, how often have you felt difficulties were piling so high that you couldn't overcome them? So you now should have numbers 1 through 10, and beside each of them, you should have a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. So now we got to score them. Scoring is always fun. And I'm going to stick this one up there, not because it's there, but because I don't want you looking there, because I know this one's hard to see. I want you thinking about the score, because and you're going to have to have a little while. So on your numbers 1 through 10, okay, I want you to find your number 4, circle number 4. Circle number 5, circle number 7, and circle number 8. Okay, so you're going to have circled numbers 4, 5, 7, and 8. Okay, now look at the number that you have beside those circled ones. And this is going to be a little complicated, but it's not meant to be, so follow with me. So you have 4 numbers circled, 4, 5, 7, and 8, and then the numbers beside them. All right, let's say that for question 4, you have a 0 on your sheet. Okay, I want you to mark through that 0 and change it to a 4. Okay, is that clear? 4 you circled. Let's say you had a 0 there. Mark through the 0, change it to the number 4. All right, you see what's happening? We're reversing. So in number 5, if you had a 1, change it to a 3. If you had a 2, leave it at 2. If you had a 3, change it to 1. If you had a 4, change it to 0. So basically what we're doing is we are reversing what you put down for questions 4, 5, 7, and 8. So on any of those, if you had a 0, it becomes a 4. If you had a 1, it becomes a 3. A 2 stays a 2. 3 becomes a 1. And 4 becomes a 0. All right, higher math. Now, what I want you to do is put the video on pause for a second and add up all those numbers with the changed numbers that you had in 4, 5, 7, and 8. So you're going to get a total number up to 40. Between a 0 and a 40 is what your final answer is going to be. So put it on pause while you have the opportunity to do that. All right, back from the pause. Now, what does it mean? So if you look at your score, if your total score now ranges from 0 to 13, 0 to 13, you are low stress. 0 to 13 is low stress. If you're 14 to 26, you have moderate stress. If you're 27 up to 40, you are high perceived stress. Okay, so let me go over those again for you since it's not on the screen. If your total score is 0 to 13, it's low. 14 to 26 is moderate. 27 to 40 is high. Okay? So now you've had the opportunity to participate in a quick and dirty stress test. I do want you to know that this is by no means the only one out there. And this, what you see on your screen right now, and it's not meant for you to be able to read it, but what I looked up, what I Googled, was printing stress test worksheets. Okay? Printable stress test worksheets. So you see all of these, and there are multiple pages of these. Multiple pages of these. So the one that I chose to use is one that I think is quick. Some of the others take much longer period of time to do. So you can do any or all of these if you want to do. If you want to do more stress testing of your own, understanding that these are not meant as psychological diagnostic tests. Okay, got to get that caveat in there. They are not, should not be considered medical evaluations. They are something that may give you a reason or something to talk with your doctor about. If you're scoring really, really high and perhaps you didn't know you were scoring that high, or perhaps you did. Okay, now, so what have we learned to this point? We have learned, for example, personality has some relationship to stress. We have learned what the definition of stress is. We have looked for particular stressors, understanding that each individual has different stressors. We have looked at how stress manifests itself in people. Again, understanding that stress manifests differently for different people. We took one of the many quick and dirty tests, but there are others, and you saw that long list or that long set of pictures. So where are we going next? Well, we've got to limit it, right? If we have it, we need to limit it because stress is not good. It's not good for us emotionally. It's not good for us physically. So how do we limit it? There are all sorts of ways. And again, different stress releases are different for different people. Some people find that meditation and relaxation is good. Some just general meditation. Some like to do yoga. Some like to, in their minds or physically, go to what they consider their happy place, where they feel relaxed. Some people have turned to religion and spirituality to feel stress relief. You can actually go to therapy. You can have this intentionality. I will not be stressed. I will not be stressed. I am not going to be stressed. You can do that. You can focus on whatever the issue is that causes stress, like time management. You feel overwhelmed. Or you can take yourself into some of your hobbies, where if you're doing something like needlework, or you're doing something like cabinetry, or you're doing something like photography, whatever your hobby happens to be, then you can forget this other stuff as you're focusing on these things that need a close attention. So it works. Now, one of the interesting things that some researchers have found is that for a lot of people, music helps you relax. Okay? Maybe it doesn't help everybody relax, and it's not just music in general. A group of researchers have found that these songs that are listed here on this screen by different people, from Mozart to Airstream, have a different soothing effect on people. So these are all clickable links, and you can do that while you're watching the video. Just pause it, click one of those links, and you'll be off. Or you can see the URL there in the bottom right-hand corner where these will pop up as well. One of the things that is considered by many, not all, but many psychologists is the very last song that's listed there, and it is Weightless by Marconi Union. They even suggest that you do not play that in your car while you are driving, because it will put you to sleep. It will make you so relaxed that you don't pay attention to driving. So I don't know that that would work for you, but I would encourage each of you to try some of those songs, to listen to them as you are going to sleep at night. All of these you can get from any of the music stores, or you can play them online as well. So I would encourage you to do that. Mark Twain, however, had an interesting idea about how to limit stress. You know, stress tends to build up in the day. So what Twain said was, this is the Weightless song, sorry about that, that Twain says that when you are sleeping, if you look at things, you might find out a lot more about yourself. How you sleep. Are you a fetal sleeper? Are you a log sleeper? Well, let me just give you a brief definition of what those are, and you can figure it out yourself. A fetal sleeper is a person who sleeps on his or her side with their knees tucked in toward the body, like a fetal position. A log sleeper is someone who rests on the side with a straight body and limbs at the side. A yearner is someone who is a side sleeper who stretch both arms out in front of them as if they are trying to grab a pillow or something else, dog, partner, whomever. A soldier sleeper tends to lay on their back, arms close to their sides. Free fallers tend to lie on their stomachs with their hands hugging their pillows. And then the starfish sleeper lie on their backs with both arms behind their pillow as if they were going to do a sit-up. Okay, so the website that's there will give you a little more information about what these do. And I got a little bit ahead of myself when I told you about Mark Twain, But what Twain says, one way to minimize stress is to eat a live frog first thing in the morning, and then nothing worse can happen to you any of the rest of the day. Okay, I don't know whether that works or not, but maybe. One of the things that I use as a stress relief is photography and travel. I love to travel. I love to take pictures like this one here, trying to capture the small world so that I'm not looking at the big picture. I am looking at the dewdrops on a spider web as kayakers are going by in the stream below me. Or this one, a winter scene, in this case in Norway, in the Briggen, where these old buildings have been there for hundreds of years. So it helps me put my not so big problems in perspective. So I'd like to thank you all very, very much for participating and viewing this presentation today. And I hope that it has been of some benefit to you, whether you are a type A or an ENTJ or a neurotic person, whatever you happen to be in whichever of those personality types. Know that you can limit your stress. Know that there are things that you can do to help. So thank you very much for viewing. And if you would like to get in touch with me, please feel free to do so. Here is my email and my cell phone number. I will tell you that I live in Arizona. Arizona does not do daylight savings time. So if you are going to call, just make sure that you are thinking Pacific time, because we don't do daylight savings time. We don't think we want to save daylight here in the desert where it's already 110 degrees. Well, not right now, but in the summer where it gets to be 110 or 120. So again, thank you guys very much for participating. I hope it has been of some value to you. Thank you and goodbye.